maximize every opportunity so that you can become legendary.
What adjustments can you make right now to make yourself 1%
Your
better?
only goal is to be the best version of you.
Brian, hey man, welcome to the March 2021 Becoming Legendary podcast, man. How are you?
Are we in March already? What the heck?
Yeah. It is crazy.
It's crazy, man. I'm doing really well though, man. How about yourself?
Really good. Yeah. Let's I know you have a topic prepped for us this week, so let's just jump right into that.
I certainly do. Thanks for that lead in. Oh, today we're going to talk about the always popular death.
Yeah.
And I say that in all seriousness, quite frankly, because I feel like dying, is something that everyone thinks about, but I don't think everyone necessarily talks about, right? So I think vocalizing some of these components of what death means to me, means to you, Patrick, and I'd like to start off, you know me, I have a lot of notes, right? So I'd like to start off with a definition. And I think this is really, really important. So I'm going to go ahead and read this definition to you or to the audience. So death is a permanent, irreversible cessation consciousness and all biological functions that sustain a living organism. The remains of a previously living organism normally begin to decompose shortly after death. And here's this last piece. Death is inevitable, universal process that eventually occurs in all living organisms. And that's Sir's version, right? That's just a simple Google search. Anyone could have done that. But gosh, there's lots of stuff in that definition, stuff we can expand on. Death has been a part of my life since I was 33. So what I mean by that is since my mom passed. I didn't think about death at all until my mother's accident, to be quite honest with you. I had family members who came and gone, and some young friends in high school and stuff that had passed while I was growing up. But it just kind of was a blip on the radar. There was not really any sort of understanding of it. So that's when death sort of started to take a bigger place in my life. And that's to you. When did or how do you death, or when does death come up for you? Does it come up for you?
Yeah. So I think, this is a really interesting universal topic, right? As the definition explains, it's a part of our experience. And one of the things when I was younger, so my story played out, and I turned roughly 24-ish, I think. I got really, 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 really sick. And sick with an undiagnosed illness, but couldn't get out of bed, couldn't make new memories, lost a lot of my old memories. Brain stopped functioning, body stopped functioning, really sick. And that was a hard universal shift within my life, because previous to that, my goal, my being, and my thought process was I am invincible and I will maintain invincibility. Right. So I've described this lots of times, but the way I think it's most easily described as to how I functioned previous to being sick is if you were playing a computer game, a video game, and you could go in and you could edit the attributes of a character, I had turned all of my attributes up to full. So it was like, it's hard for people to believe looking at me now, but I was 190 pounds. I was like 3% body fat. I could bench press like 300 pounds. I could squat like 550 pounds. I could remember everything. It's just like all of the things that you think are really, I thought were really important, I was really good at. And then all of that stopped, right? I couldn't walk. Like walking to the bathroom would fatigue me for days. So it was this, from how am I going to live forever to this appreciation of, oh, if this is life, I don't, it's not that important to me. And that was like a really hard and immediate shift within my being that changed my paradigm of what life is. And the thing that came out of that that's the most interesting and impactful for me is by appreciating death, by understanding that it not only is it coming, but in some way it offers a relief from the experience that you're living. Life became much sweeter. So when you started out by saying everybody thinks about death, and I think that's actually in some ways 100% true, because it's we're all in some level of awareness that we are going to die, or that we don't want to die. And at the same time, I think there's a lot of people going through life that are consciously or subconsciously blocking out the fact that we will.
You know, yeah, you're probably right with that. Now that it comes out of someone else's mouth other than my brain, right? I think that's a good point. And that's much how I lived my life before. So you're right. Let's take that back. Well, I'm not going to take it back. I'm going to shift it just a little bit, because that's how my experience of life was much similar to yours, right? I was invincible. I thought I was invincible. There was, I mean, I did things growing up that on purpose that tested my invincibility. On purpose. Like, that was part of the thrill I got out of being a human being. I thought was the number one thrill you could have, is testing it was mostly physical limits, right? Sure. Whether it be working out, or whether it be hold your breath for a long time, or climb the highest mountain. There's always these goals I would set, and then would reach the goal, and then I would push on for the highest, or the next bigger goal. Yeah. And that was just how I lived. And it wasn't until my mother was in this serious accident where she was laying in a hospital bed. Half of her head was basically caved in due to the impact of her head when she fell out of a golf cart my dad was driving, and impacted the side of her head. The side of her head was caved in. So her physical body was there. She couldn't talk. She couldn't open her eyes. She couldn't move her body. Nothing. But so that's when I started to think about, is my mother even really there? You know, is she alive, or her physical body's alive, but what about the rest of it? So and as time went on, as the year progressed, when she was this coma, lying in this hospital bed, there became a bigger and bigger separation between her physical body and, I would say, her spirit, right? Like, you could almost, there were times when I was sitting in the hospital room with her where I would be looking at her physical body, and something in my intuition would say, you're not talking to your mom right there. You need to look up. So as I looked up, there was this weird, like, energetic feeling that I would get, almost as if her soul was residing above her physical body. Yeah. So she was like trapped in between this afterlife, this what I would like to think of as complete and other like bliss, love, ecstasy, connection, all like that was. So she was like stuck in this weird position in between the two of them. So that's when I started to really like dive into death, and dive into the fact this is being presented to me for a reason. I need to start to embrace this as a part of my daily existence. And I, honest to God, as my mother went through this transition from physical body into her soul existence, I started to appreciate, like you were saying, appreciate life even more. It becomes sweeter and sweeter the more you can have those dualities, right? Front and center, living and the dying, and in this beautiful existence or gift that we have of life.
Yeah. Yeah, there is something clearly and obviously wrong with denying something that is a 100% a surety, right? Like, so one of the things I always talk about is this idea that we have to live within the real of reality, and that if we allow things that are not to be reality to become part of reality, we are losing ourselves and our grasp on this experience. So when we are blocking out the fact that we're going to die, when we're taking that eventuality away from our consciousness, we really are shorting ourselves, and that, I think, is an interesting thing that we're in a way programmed to do. Our minds are, our minds are programmed to block out that eventuality, because otherwise it could be all consuming, right? It would be easy for the fact that this is going to come to an end to be all consuming. So there's a hardwired operating system within us that says, that's not think about that. But when we do think about that, and when we do allow that to be a part of our daily experience gets better. And that's a weird thing to think about, but it is a true thing.
It is.
I
could even go ahead.
No, tell me.
I could even go as far as to say that looking back on my life before death became such an integral part, is that my life was empty.
Yeah.
My life missed connection.
Yeah.
And somehow in a weird way, well, the passing, I keep bringing this up because it's just a part of me. Okay. So like when you get me, you get this story, you get this part of my existence. But like my life has become so rich and so filled with connection because I honor the light and the dark. I honor this existence as well as what's going to happen eventually. Before, there was a disconnect, man. I was pushing the envelope. I didn't even know that I was doing it, but I was butting up against death a lot more than I ever even realized. By the way I was living my life, by the things I was doing, by the people I was hanging out with, by the decisions I was making, all of those things. I was like, me and death were best friends. We were walking right next to each other. Thank God he didn't decide to take me as well. I mean, seriously, that's how impactful the relationship has been now with, I call it like, it's like a person. It's like another relation, another person for me.
Yeah. Okay, so this person thing, I think that's a good one. So what is a person, right? Is how do we define a person? Is it having a mind? Is it having a body? Where do you draw your definition of person?
Well, being able to manipulate the physical environment around you, I think is a really big piece. And also the fact that, language too is a big piece of being a human being, right? I think it's communicating, being able to manipulate your physical world around you, and then having that understanding of what we're talking about, right? The duality of the whole picture. My answer.
I think you're asking a lot. I think you're asking a lot of people.
Yeah.
So when I look at, a person is a very interesting. I think there's a lot of ways that you could draw your bubble. And I don't know where. I don't think that I don't think that life is necessarily how I would draw the bubble. I think life is a piece of borrowed time and planet and Earth, right? We start to accumulate nutrients from the planet that we have been plopped into. and we start accumulating those nutrients within the womb, right? We start gathering nutrients from the world, and we create this physical body. And during the creation of that physical body, we create this remarkably complex mind. But when we get to the point where we have this complex mind and this simplistic body, the reality is those are our two bondages. You know, the body and the mind are really the only things that restrict us from expansion.
Yeah.
And the body and the mind can be defined as a person. And there's also this other, right? This energetic force that animates the body and the mind.
Yeah.
And I think you can draw your Venn diagram around that energy, as well as being a person. Or maybe life would be a better way to describe that, right? So what is life instead of what is person? Because there are very similar experiences and energetic forces within all living entities. Yeah. One of the things that I've been really struggled conceptualizing is when someone is deceased, and this doesn't happen in all cultures, because in a lot of cultures, what one of the primary priorities is getting rid of the body, incinerating the body, doing something to destroy the physical body, and a lot of that is so that there is an energetic release. Like it is a different experience for those people grieving when there is a body. And there is a different energetic capsule within the physical body that has deceased. And the thing that I always go back to is, even after someone is deceased, their hair and nails still grow. So there is still something captured, there's energy captured within that physical being that is, to me, it's somehow, some way stuck, right? There's a stuck energy in this physical being that is no longer able to animate. And I've always like felt that I had to redraw my diagram around what is life, what is a person, based upon the fact that there's something energetically still in a deceased being.
That's interesting. You know, and it makes me think of, I'm not sure if I've ever told this story. Maybe I've told it to you, but I definitely haven't told it on this podcast. So strap in your seatbelts. No, in all seriousness, what I'm referencing to is again, my mother. So I went and saw a shamanic healer for I was stuck in my life, right? After my mom passed, I went into a deep, dark period of my life that taught me a lot. And it also taught me a lot about what you're talking about too. So I went to this shamanic healer, and my mother and I were like this. Like I'm a mama's boy through and through. My dad was very much part of my life growing up, but my mother was the backbone of it all. I traveled with her competitive golf. She was just my everything. So we were very, very close in that way. I would talk to her on the daily. And so after she passed, her energy was stuck to me. So she was actually what they call in between, what shamanic healers call in between her soul's journey and earth. So she was stuck halfway between. In other words, she had a cord still stuck to me, right? So what this shamanic healer did is he laid me down on a table, and he went through a series of different protocols, stages, whatever he was doing. He set rocks on my stomach, and he was praying and doing all these shaking rattles, and I don't know what the hell is happening. And then I had my eyes closed, and then he said in a soft, sweet voice, almost like my mother's, almost. It was really, really strange. He said, Brian, you can open your eyes now. And when I opened my eyes, his face was right here next to mine, but his face was no longer his face.
Mm-hmm.
His face was my mother's face. And I'm not like, I was on any drugs. This is not like a psychedelic experience. This is like, this is the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
And I said, and his name was Dean. I said, Dean, you look like my mother. And then it was not Dean anymore. It was my mother speaking through Dean. Mm. And what Dean or what my mother said to me, it was really strange. And then, so I was seeing my mother's face in his face, and then Dean popped up again. His face like morphed back into Dean and said, it was almost as if he was like the mediator. He said, Brian, your mother has something she wants to tell you. And then I blinked, I opened my eyes again, and it was my mother's face again. It was the trippiest thing ever, man. And in those words, my mother said to me, Brian, all I wanted to let you know is wanted to let you know that I loved you one more time, and that you have the freedom or the capability. She said, you have the capability to be whoever you want to be. Mm. And I lost it, tears and all the things. Yeah. And then there was also the piece too, where it was a conversation, Patrick, where that I had to give permission to my mom that she could leave to go to her soul's journey. Mm. She was no longer needed as my guardian, if you will, however you want to look at that cord being attached to me. Yeah. Right. So my mom said, she said, are you going to be okay? And I said, yes, Mom. And then Dean popped in again and said, your mother's asking for permission so she can leave and go on her soul's journey. Right. So I said, Mom, you have permission. I'm okay now. I'm okay. And she kept saying, are you sure? Are you sure? That mama's pull, right? Are you okay? Are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, I'm okay. And Dean was like, you have to say it like you mean it. Because I wasn't meaning it. It was like this, I was like saying it, but that little child in me who wants my mom to still be alive said, no, I'm not okay without my mom. Right. Yeah. So there was this moment where I had to speak to her energy and literally let it go. And then he did like whatever the cord cutting ceremony was. He finished off that stuff. And then Dean and I embraced, or my mom and I embraced. And then when we came out of the embrace, she was gone. She had left. Mm. But I still feel my mother's energy all the time. And that's what I think what you're saying. So there's people who are close to you, if you allow it, if you're open to the possibility, they can be with you for all of eternity. They're with you now, right? If you're open to that. Because I feel like there's a situation where you can be in two places in once, right? You could also be on your soul's journey, but you could also be here on earth making, not making anything happen, but just supporting or holding the people the other souls who you are connected to on the earth. So whether or not that's a physical experience or whether or not that's an energetic experience, I think our minds, human beings, have a tough time differentiating the two. When in some facets, they can be one and the same. Mm. That's my experience. I feel my mother all the time, more so than when she was alive, because I feel like I've allowed that into my being. And again, that's being okay with the fact that I'm going to pass away one day. Mm-hmm. Like I'm on my darkest days, on the days that I'm struggling the most as a human being, and I'm living that humanness. Don't take this the wrong way. Don't, please. But sometimes there have been days where dying would almost be easier than what you're going through here on earth. Okay. Mm-hmm. So not that I'm not like, life, that's a whole other topic of conversation. I'm not there. I know from my mother's experience that death is absolute pure ecstasy. It's bliss. It's connection. It's everything you can possibly imagine and you're looking for in a human experience given to you.
Mm. Yeah, I think that there is, and it's an interesting and dichotomous thought, right? It's like, because we only know the experience that we're in within this body. So it's hard to think about letting go of the experience that we're in.
Yes.
And because there is no window into anything beyond the experience that we have, or there may be windows into that, right? Like there are times, there are places that you can experience. There are infinite spaces that you can experience through meditation. That will change the way your brain conceptualizes what is possible. And
breathing, right? Yeah.
Or not needing to breathe. Right? Like there are things that can happen. There are things that can happen within appropriate meditation, or stillness, whatever it is, where you can experience things that you just that I never thought were possible. Right? So I've experienced things just in a seat, still spine, that I never thought could be possible. And I think when you start to experience those things, you do start to think about what else you may not know, you may not be aware of, and that window of what is beyond this life experience is certainly one of those things. And there are lots of stories, right? Like there's lots of stories out there about what it's like to go on, but we don't really have concrete knowledge. And quite honestly, a lot of the stories are just made up fairy tales so that people feel good about what's coming, or so that they can be more easily controlled.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Yes.
So I think that there is this beautiful idea, and I do that infinite, that experience of the infinite is something that is so overwhelming and so impactful. There may be nothing to fear at all. Yeah. There's nothing to fear at all, right? Like there's there. Let's say nothing happens, then nothing happens. Yeah. Right. So there's no fear of nothing, because you no longer experience anything. And then if there's this experiential expansion into infinity, then we're pretty lucky.
We're pretty lucky.
We're pretty lucky. Tell me.
No. You go ahead.
Well, so I wanted to turn it to this, the grieving process is also a part of human experience. And there's this old yogic story that I've referenced, which is essentially just like, the best outcome in life is that your parents die, you die, your children die, in that order. That is the best possible outcome. Yeah. And it doesn't always go that way, but the grieving process, I think, is a much harder process when you lose someone out of that order. And the grieving process is hard enough, but when things go out of that order, you know, it's like so the yoga story is like this old yogi comes and blesses a wedding, and he's like, you know, I hope your parents die, and then you die, and then your children die. And the guy's like, well, that's the worst blessing ever. And he's like, well, what would you rather have? Right. You know, what would you rather have? So the best outcome in the process of grieving is that you get to grieve for your parents, right? Like that is the thing. If you get to do that, you're really lucky, because it means things have gone in the appropriate order.
Yeah.
And that another like really impactful experience for me. So I was in a position where the person who I had chosen to start a business with and lived a life with, up and left in like a 3-day period. And in that 3-day period, there was like this really profound experience where a couple things happened to me. One, I would just go out into the desert and I just walk. And a lot of the times during that time, I would walk with my eyes closed, because I just was so in tune with things that my body would just find its way. One time I'm just walking through the desert, eyes are closed, and I get this sensation to open my eyes. Like something within me is just like, open your eyes. And I looked to my left, and there were like 3 or 4 jackrabbits just like right to my left. And I looked to my right, and there were like 3 or 4 jackrabbits right to my right. And they were just like walking along with me. Wow. And it was on that same walk prior to this jackrabbit experience. I have no idea what the jackrabbits mean. I just know that I was walking, and jackrabbits usually run away from you, and they were just walking with me. And that was one of those things where you're just like, is this freaking real? Because this does not seem real. And at the same time, I get it. Like me saying I can walk with my eyes closed also seems rather ridiculous. And
not to me.
it can be though. Like it doesn't offend me. I'm pretty confident I couldn't do it right now, but in this time in my life, I was very in tune with the universe, and it was just the best experience ever, quite honestly. There's so many reasons it was the best experience ever. But on that same walk before this happened, I was walking along, and I was just like overcome with this grief. It was just like, I was just sad, and I felt like I had been wronged and blah, blah, blah. And I had this thought of, you know, just like crystal clear, like, hey, Patrick, your parents are going to die. And if you can't deal with the fact that this freaking girl did you wrong, like, how are you going to deal with the fact that your parents are going to die? And at that point, it was just like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like, yeah, move on with your girl. Like, life is good.
Right.
There was such a powerful shift and impact in me, just from that thought. And I've gone back to that thought, and a lot of times when things feel hard, it's like, yeah, there are harder things. Number one, there are harder things that you will hope to be lucky enough to experience. And the things that are challenging you are very overcomeable, very, very overcomeable. So I remember that moment, that walk in particular, because there was this profound sensation of there are hard things that are going to happen in your life. You do not have a choice. These hard things are going to happen. And I remember that walk because just being in tune with the universe is a really, really magical experience.
It's one of the most magical experiences you can have in this world, you know? And I think that maybe, well, first of all, thanks for sharing that with me and with the audience. I think there's a lot of medicine there. One, walk with your eyes closed and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's really rad. And number two, in all seriousness, I think that out of that experience, the experience that I've had with death has been one of the largest gifts in my life I've ever been treated to.
Yeah.
I've chosen to look at my mother's death as a blessing, as a gift, because it's led me to the man that I'm becoming, or the man that I am.
Yeah.
And this man that you see in front of on this screen, or that you hear in your ears right now, is never a man that I thought I even existed in this world, let alone me being this person. So yeah. I feel like I'm offering this to people, right? I'm offering this to you, the listener, or to you, the viewer, whatever it may be, that if you're struggling with life, or if you're going through a moment of time where a relationship ends, or a job ends, or someone gets put in the hospital with a sickness, someone, God forbid, someone dies, an animal dies, whatever sort of experience you're having in your life, if you can bring it to the fact that this experience that you're having right here and right now is temporary. Like, and with that temporary nature comes, I humbly say this, a responsibility. And that responsibility is to honor the temporary nature of this experience by appreciating it.
Yeah.
By leaning into the really, really good days and the really, really crappy days.
Yeah.
Right? The days where you walk in the desert with your eyes closed and jackrabbits follow you. The day that you have a cord cut from your mother. The day that you find out your father or your mother, God forbid, has cancer, or whatever the situation may be. Can you look at that as an opportunity to further appreciate your experience of life? I mean, one of the most amazing things that I'm coming to realize each and every day that I live is this relationship I have with you, Patrick. And the fact that this is the most real human expression I've ever had with another human being, girl or guy. like I feel like without my experiences of the really, really crappy stuff, this wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to think that I'm a fan of death, that I love saying the word death. But when I sit up in the morning out of my bed and my 2 feet hit the ground, we touched on this in the first podcast, the first thing that comes to my mind is that I'm alive, that I'm not dead, not dead. And I have another day to live. That is freaking amazing. So whatever comes with that living experience during the day, I can handle it. They're going to have the ups and downs. I'm going to feel all the feels, all the things. But at the end of the day, guess what? I'm still alive.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah. It's a beautiful experience. Is one lifetime enough?
Wow. I've thought about that a lot too, because that's a really good question. I think that, well, in my personal opinion, I don't think that this is going to be my first, or this is my first attempt at this. I don't think it is. I think I've been here before, but not in this body, or with, any of these experiences. Of course, this is all fresh and new, but I'm starting to understand that things that are playing out in my life are not coming from me. They're coming from a previous life or existence that has rolled over into now. And now I'm forced or chosen, however you want to look at it. I choose to look at my karma, if you will, and deal with it, and sprinkle in love into that existence. So I don't think that this is my only shot at this, or has been. And I'd like to know that answer from you too. Do you think one life is enough or not?
Well, it's not enough to learn all the lessons. I know that.
Yeah. But have you been here before? I'm not going to answer for you. You got to answer that question, man.
No, as my life has evolved, and as I have gathered more experience, right? In the same way that I've gathered physical body, I've gathered experience within this path that I'm walking. I think it becomes more and more clear that that I didn't get this pass through right. Like this won't be my last either.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
but I think the nice thing about this life experience is that I've evolved. I've gathered a remarkable amount of wisdom.
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking about this, and I haven't really put these two ideas together, but adversity is truly what allows for wisdom, right?
Yes.
Without adversity, if life is a continual path of ease, you're not going to be a well-developed human. And I let your kids fail. Freaking let your kids fail.
Please.
because
Someone said it.
Is like the thing, right? So when I say I've gathered wisdom over this life, I've failed remarkably over this life, and I've failed in big enough ways that I know I've grown, I've expanded, and that expansion will carry with me into the next experience. So yeah, I've learned a lot in this lifetime, and I have a lot more to learn in this lifetime. But I've also, one of the things, if you look at your life, and if you look at the lives of the people around you, you will notice there are cycles of reoccurring problems, right? It's like if you don't learn it the first time, it's coming back. So you can think like you took a shortcut around it. You can think you figured out a way to cheat the system. It's going to come back to you. It's going to find you. If it needs to find you in a more aggressive way, it will find you in a more aggressive way. So learning and really internalizing the life lessons, the experiential lessons, is really important. And I feel like there have been enough of those experiential universal lessons that I've taken in so far that I'm really pleased with where I am in this experience.
Pleased, I love that word. I think that you do a remarkable job of wow. I didn't see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff as you were transitioning through Vitality, that whole experience that you had.
Yeah.
But what I did see of you was a remarkable capability of surrendering to the situation. And understanding that by you surrendering into that situation, or into that, what was given to you, that allowed you to take your power back, because your power, your business, your life was ripped away from you.
Yeah.
So with that, and with the surrendering into this death idea, right, you can gain some of your power back, or gain some of your humanness back by surrendering into that idea.
Yeah.
As you were speaking, I had this question, and this is for everybody. And so have you ever heard of, when someone says, "Oh, I feel like you're a kindred spirit"? Ever heard that expression before?
I've heard that expression. Yeah.
a kindred spirit, right? So I looked that up. I'm all about definitions and stuff. So I looked up what kindred spirit meant. And kindred spirit, I'm not going to read the definition, but a kindred spirit, this is my generalization of it, is basically a spirit that you feel comfortable around, right? That you feel like there's some sort of, maybe you've met before in a past life.
Yeah.
Right, type of thing. And I even would venture someone to, even when you look into someone's eyes, I get it. Very blessed. I look at my wife's eyes. Danielle, I love you, sweetie. Gosh, I miss you. But anyways, when I look into her eye, I know our spirits, our souls have like either crossed paths or been together before. There's some sort of magic there.
Yeah.
So I would ask you or venture or invite you to, next time you look into someone's eyes and you get fluttery feeling in your stomach or your heart, or it's almost as if you can see your soul.
Yeah.
Like when I look in your eyes, Patrick, I get that same feeling, man. I get that same, we've been here before, man. Now we're doing it again. We're doing this stuff out over, right? So this is like this beautiful, but like what I invite people to do is look into someone's eyes. And if you feel that little something that feels a little uncomfortable,
yeah,
maybe, just maybe, could you be open to the fact that this is not your first encounter with that soul?
Yeah.
Just going to throw that out there.
Yeah. I think there are definitely those really powerful connections that you feel with people, and they're there for a reason, right? It's like whatever the reason is, follow that, find out, like go through the looking glass there.
Yes, that's a better way to put it.
Explore.
Explore more. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you believe in a hell? Because that's such a I feel like that's such a westernized idea.
Yeah, for sure. So
you can elaborate.
I find it interesting. I find it fascinating that people don't consider that they could be living in their heavenly experience right now. Right? Like what makes you think that this isn't that experience? And that I find more fascinating than the idea of this organized creation of afterlife. So I think that I think that if you drill back into the New Testament and you look at who created the New Testament and why the New Testament was created, it's pretty fascinating. I will say and maybe leave it at that.
Probably smart.
But well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know. Everything's really touchy, right?
Yeah.
Because these are like archetypal paradigms that people have built their lives around, and when you start talking about those things, it can hurt to hear things, and it can be hard to hear those things kind of questioned. But the looking into if you take the opportunity to look into the history of these things, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to understand why these things were created in the way that they were. But I don't see what about the experience and the opportunity that we have don't fit the definition that even the most strict religious perspective would put around a heavenly existence in comparison to the opportunity that we are living within.
Yeah, that's well said, man.
It's we live in Eden, man. I mean, this everything that we could ever want is right here. So we just need to appreciate. I think that everything will be a lot better if we appreciated, like, right? Instead of looking at this experience as like this stepping stone, like waiting room, and then once you leave the waiting room, you get this opportunity. I mean, shoot. Just look around. The opportunity is right here every single day. And all you have to keep in mind is that someday this opportunity is not going to be there.
Yeah.
No matter what you think, look around, man. It's a freaking beautiful planet. It's a beautiful existence. It's a beautiful life experience if you let it be.
If you let it be. You know, there's always this thing I like to think about that it comes to mind when I eat a piece of fruit or eat a piece of food that tastes really, really amazing.
Yeah. And
I think to myself, like, I don't know if you're going to experience this in heaven because you don't have a body. Yeah. So what is this experience that we're having here on earth?
Yeah.
I would like to think that, because you've always heard that those, right? You can be in the imprisonment of mind. You can be living in a heaven or hell right in your mind.
For sure.
Like you don't even have to go anywhere or do anything. It's all about how you approach your mental view of the world. You know what I mean? It's become my wife now is also going through the passing of her father really recently, and one of the main things she's told me around this whole piece is that her father and her didn't have like the greatest of relationships. She comes from a divorced family, and the father kind of split and up and did his own thing for years, and they connected later in her life. And so it's offer to people is that I think it's really important that if you're listening to this, you're obviously having a human experience, so you're alive and here in this earth. So I would like to propose what Danielle has learned from this is that the one thing I wish that she would have changed about the experience between her father and herself is only the fact that she would have shared how much she thanks him for just giving birth, like being like, being a part of her, like just like, yeah. That's it. The purest, like simplest form of a relationship. You know what I mean? And so I'd offer, not to you personally, but to people who are listening more specifically, that like, if you take anything from listening to this, it's to appreciate life in a way that others you're appreciating it. So vocalizing that, or showing that you care. Like you just sent me a beautiful gift the other day. Like, oh my God, like thank you. That for me is an appreciation of life. Like you appreciate the fact that I'm alive. So you send me this gift that's hopefully going to help me. Or if you like whatever your personal situation is, I feel like there's a lot of medicine in speaking, getting what you need to say out of your body and into the ethers about specifically living and dying. You know what I mean? That's a big component of what my wife's going through now. She wished that she had expressed to her father more, that she appreciates him just for being alive.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Not all the wrongs, not all the rights, not any of the details of their relationship or their lack thereof, simply about being another human being, taking everything else out of the equation. Just thank you for being alive, Dad. That's it.
Yeah. I do think, that's the one thing that is true, right? Is like, you don't get that opportunity once it's gone. So, and it comes back to, it's not fun to think about the fact that the people you love are going to die, but they are. And when you do think about the fact that the people you love are going to die, not might die someday, they are going to die, period. It is easier to spend quality and appreciative time with them, right? So even if all that quality and appreciated time is saying, hey, Dad, thank you for being a part of my life, period.
Yeah.
Right? Like taking those opportunities to do that is a worthwhile. You will not regret taking that time. There will not be a time when you say, man, I really wish I didn't do that.
Right. Never.
Never.
Ever.
So I think that's probably the most beautiful place that we can end this, is that really, like, remember when you wake up and you look at your loved ones, remember they are it's not just you. It's not just the fact that you're going to die, but everyone you know is also going to die. And that might not feel like a fun thought exercise, and it might not be a fun thought exercise, but the growth and the expansion and the opportunity comes from adversity.
Comes from adversity. Comes from putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be.
All three at once. The Holy Trinity.
Why not?
Brian, thank you, man.
Thank you, dude.
Appreciate you. Love you. Talk to you. Well, I'll talk to you before 30 days, but we'll do this again in about 30 days.
Sounds perfect, man. I love you too. And I'll talk to you again soon.
Talk to you soon.
Man.